What's up, my comic comrades? Today, as promised, we have something crazy fun in store for you guys. We have partnered with ComiXology and Scott Snyder's new Best Jacket Press imprint to give you guys an exclusive look at Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's new creator-owned series, We Have Demons. Issue 1 of this new series officially releases this coming Tuesday, October 5th on ComiXology and Kindle, and you can pre-order it for yourself right now using our link in the description. But as for today's insider sneak peek, we'll be showing you guys how the story begins and giving you a clue as to where it's going that you'll only see here. In fact, if you've been watching Variant's exclusive coverage on the release of Astonishing Times issues, you probably have an idea of what we have in store for you, including exclusive commentary from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo themselves. So think of this one as a pull list on steroids. Anyway, We Have Demons kicks off what ComiXology is calling Scottober, and it's the first of 8 new titles Scott Snyder is launching under the ComiXology Originals and Best Jacket Press banners. But hey, why don't we let Scott tell you about the new titles himself?
What's up, Variant Nation? So excited to be here at Scott Snyder, and I'm thrilled to talk to you about our new partnership at Best Jacket Press and ComiXology Originals. We have 8 books coming out starting in October. They're calling it Scottober. I'm just going to embrace it and lean into it. And the 8 books are with some amazing co-creators. We have Greg Capullo co-creating We Have Demons with me, big blockbuster Saturday morning R-rated fun. We have Clear, the sci-fi noir with Francis Manipal. We have Night of the Ghoul with Francesco Francavilla, my old Black Mirror partner, which is about classic horror but done in a modern way. Dudley Dotson and the Forever Machine, a YA-inspired book about a young boy who discovers a machine created by the legendary Daedalus that opens portals to different universes. We have Canary, my first true Western with the great Dan Panosian, about a mysterious mine collapse in the 1800s. We have Barnstormers, which is historical fiction with the great Tula Lotay, about a young pilot who picks up a runaway bride and has like a terrible, dark, wild romance adventure. Duck and Cover, which is a post-apocalyptic manga adventure with my blood brother Raphael Albuquerque from American Vampire, about a post-apocalyptic 1955 where only kids that hid under their desks in those old videos during this nuclear exchange survive in this strange new world. And we have Book of Evil with Jock, my longtime friend and collaborator on many books, about a future in which 90+% of the world's population are born psychopaths. I couldn't be more excited about the line. Our partners at ComiXology Originals have done a great job giving us tremendous creative freedom, and they're going to deliver the books in a way to you that's affordable and that shows how digital and print can work together in this moment to really push the industry forward and create a robust and healthy comics on the other side.
Yeah, we'll be reading all of those, but let's get started right now with We Have Demons, issue 1. Issue 1 of We Have Demons starts off with an entire page that acts as a warning from the narrator to the reader regarding the subject matter of the story. It reads, "Hark, a warning for the squeamish. This story is about the fall of mankind, not in a poetic sense though. More in a faces ripped off of skulls and eaten sense, or like in the sense that it has actual demons reaching up and pulling people's guts out through their buttholes, while all around them the earth cracks open and the sky crashes down in white hot chunks that turns their friends and family and everyone they love into clouds of blood splatter and burnt hair smell, like in that sense." So yeah, needless to say, the first page gets your attention pretty quickly. But the narrator goes on to say, but the story is also about faith, which is really interesting because the narrator also admits in this warning that they are among the group of people made queasy, as they put it, by faith. And this had us wondering, does the narrator represent the author? And if so, why write a story about faith?
I wanted to write a supernatural story about faith because this one, it's personal, and I'm writing it with my kids in mind. You know, it's a dark moment out there. It does feel a lot like, I think, the situation in Demons, where all of this horn, this dark material that turns us into demons, has been hitting the planet more and more. All those crazy UFO sightings that we see all the time, that's that stuff hitting the earth. And so everywhere out there, people are turning more and more monstrous because of this stuff. But I think my kids are growing up in a world in real time where we're more divided. You know, we feel more isolated from each other. People have less hope about the future. And nothing, I think, is as important in faith as faith right now. Not just faith in any one God or a religious faith necessarily, but in faith in each other, in faith in our ability collectively to overcome these systemic and entrenched problems and make a better future. And so as crazy as Demons is, with blood and gore, and it's like Spawn with Batman and metal and all that stuff, it is really a book that I want to be inspirational in that regard too, because it is. It's, as the first page says, it's not a book for the squeamish because it does deal with faith.
Well, that makes sense, and it actually takes us to the beginning of the story, where we start with the Godfolk. On the next page, we are introduced to our narrator, who begins to tell us about her neighbors, Bob and Layla Spoon, both members of a Unitarian religious cult called Godfolk. She says, "I've known the Spoons my whole life, and they're so Godfolk it hurts to look at them," as we see Bob and Layla asking our narrator and key character in the story, Lamb, if she's okay, and commenting that her eyes are watering. We then see Lamb for the first time with narration saying, "That's me," trying to look at them, as she tells the Spoons that it's just her allergies and that she loves their new pieces. While in the next panel, we see a bunch of, let's just call them, oddly shaped sculptures. Lamb then begrudgingly proceeds to tell us more about the Spoons in the side narration, explaining that Bob and Layla were high school sweethearts, and that they spent much of their time working to care for blind kids, homeless animals, and other charitable works. They even took in the old woman who they bought their house from because she didn't have any family and was going senile, and they didn't want her being alone. In fact, we find out that it's the old woman, whose name is Bess, that makes these bizarre sculptures. Or as Lamb describes it, Bess was an artist, but now only makes these sculptures shaped like angry melting penises, which the Spoons display all over the house to encourage her creativity. She then says, "Godfolk, through and through."
Godfolk in our book are people that our main character, Lamb's father, he was the pastor in the local church in Florida, who he says you just look at and you know are good. But unbeknownst to Lamb, a lot of the people that she always assumed were Godfolk are actually infected by this demon virus. So she has to look out. All those definitions of good and evil and Godfolk and demon folk and all of it are going to change. She'll soon find herself partnered up with someone who she would definitely not qualify as Godfolk, and probably more like a demon folk on her big adventure.
The Godfolk are here to kind of fight against the dark forces that exist in the world, and it's a constant tug of war in demons, and there's a deep mythology that surrounds all of this, and so that's our good guys. Those are our good guys.
At this point, you're already getting that one of these things is not like the other vibes. But things go to the next level when Lamb closes the page by telling us that in 3 weeks, the Spoons are set to have triplets and that she's supposed to be the baby's godmother. Only to follow that up by saying, "But the thing is, 1 minute from now, I'm going to murder the Spoons with this hatchet. My name is Lamb, after Lamassu, an ancient angel, but I am not Godfolk," as we look at the panel to see Lamb's hand gripping a hatchet.
From the very start, Lamb is someone who comes into this whole mythology of our book disbelieving it. You know, she says on that very first page, "I am not someone about faith. I am not someone about supernatural stuff. I'm about science." And a lot of the book is about realizing that science and faith go together in all these kinds of ways, and sometimes produce something wondrous and reveal things that are inspirational and amazing and mysterious about the universe, and other times reveal things that are horrifying and terrifying. So in that particular scene, she's about to test her theory that demons aren't real, and I think she's in for a pretty fun surprise.
Okay, so now we know that Lamb has been warned that some Godfolk are infected by a demon virus, but she doesn't believe it and is about to hack Mr. and Mrs. Spoon to bits to prove it isn't true. Which sounds freaking nuts. We don't know why she thinks that yet, but on the next page, Lamb tries to give us a little context for that seemingly insane idea by saying she's getting ahead of herself and that maybe she should start this Fall of Man story farther back in time. She then references several specific points in time, each associated with key pieces that play some kind of role in all of this. The first being 3 billion years ago with the arrival of the Seraphim Stone. The second one being 100,000 years ago in a secret species of man no one knows about. And the last one being 5,000 years ago with the forging of the 1,000 Blades. Now, all those sound crazy interesting and we want to know more. So let's see what Snyder and Capullo can tell us about them.
So by the second page, Lamb, who is a talker of a character, is already giving away all these secrets about the mythology of our book. And in our book, there exist these two elements. One is the lightest thing ever created. It was the very first element ever created after the Big Bang. So its atomic number is 0. It actually has no protons, but only subatomic particles at its nucleus. At the very other end is the darkest, heaviest material ever created in the farthest reaches of space. Lamb's father calls these things Halo and Horn. Horn, as you can imagine, turns us into these horrifying demons and these monsters. And Halo, and there's only a tiny bit of Halo left on Earth, is used to make weapons, these blades. These, at first, 1,000 blades, and now there are only 9 left. I'm giving away everything. I'm worse than her. There are only 9 left, and they slay demons. And so our angels, or our secret organization, angels, have their halos and their swords. Lamb's father was one of the legendary warriors of this group, and after he dies, she has to decide whether or not to take up his blade.
Well, the designs that I did for the good guys, weaponry and stuff, I mean, it all starts because, as you mentioned, the stone that falls to Earth, and this is, that generates this powerful good force that can take out the dark force. And so then it was just like, make them as crazy and wild and, fabled, you know what I mean? They couldn't be just straight, broadswords that you'd see in, Braveheart or whatever kind of movie like that. You just had to give them a little extra flair, more Lord of the Rings kind of vibe to it, because we are demons, big fable. So, I wanted to give it that real fantasy element.
See, we told you from the beginning that you were going to get exclusive insights into this story. And at this point, between the reveal of the halo and horn elements and the secret organization of angelic demon hunters who wield the 9 remaining blades made from what's left of the halo elements, we're now starting to see there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. Anyway, after Lamb makes us aware that there's a much bigger situation and backstory to what's going on, she decides to start her story where it feels the most natural, which is 14 years ago in Pascagoula County, Florida, where we see her at only 5 years old. Through her continued narration, Lamb introduces us to her father, Cash O'Colin, or Cash for short. Lamb goes on to say that her mom died in a hit-and-run accident when she was 2 years old, and that it's always been her and her dad against the world. She then immediately shows us what she says is her earliest memory of her father, as we see Cash telling Lamb, "Hi kiddo, it's all gonna be alright, I promise," followed by her dad picking up an axe and chopping off Lamb's right arm. Now, one might say that's an unfortunate first memory to have of one's dad. Just a wee little bit. But on the next page, Lamb tells us that Cash at least had a good reason for lobbing part of her arm off.
Lamb has had a very interesting life. Our main character, when she was about 5 years old, she got bit on the middle finger by a snake, and it infected her whole arm, and by the time her father found her, it was rotted out, so he had to chop it off. And every year, he makes her a new arm, and he writes God Girl on it, and he works with the people at the university to make them really high-tech and all of this stuff, so she's got this cool prosthetic arm. And little does she know that there's a secret about the last arm that he makes her before he dies. So there's a lot of story behind her missing arm, and it ties into the whole mythology of the series.
I'd like to play that tension scene by showing the smiling little face, and then, daddy looking down with a big smile. And I put like a butterfly barrette in her hair, because I just think, that's a cute little thing. But then, when I reverse the angle and you just have the close-up of the butterfly, so oh, that's little Lamb. And it's cropped, so you just see dad with the big hefty axe. And that is, how I set that shot up to be the most dramatic, and then flip to the back. So you don't actually see the action, but, like Hitchcock, you know what's happening.
The secrets and mysteries just keep building. As Scott just told us, Lamb's prosthetic arm and even how she lost the arm in the first place is another big piece to the story. So be watching out for that as the story progresses. But from there, Lamb continues by saying, corny as it sounds, back then my dad was my hero. No two ways about it. He was a good dad. He always took time for me, made me feel supported. Even when he started dating again and married my old 6th grade teacher, June Magada, he put me first. As we are shown several panels of Cash giving Lamb, or Dilla as he lovingly called her, the prosthetic arm he engraved himself, as well as teaching her how to hunt and taking her fishing, just generally being a solid father. But Lamb also says, I wasn't the only one who looked up to him though, as we learn that Cash is also the pastor of a local church, Pascagoula Unitarian. At which point we jump forward in time to when Lamb is in her teenage years, and we see her sitting in church as she continues her story by saying, he was Pastor Cash, but he was cool, open-minded. He loved science, astronomy especially. We both did. Faith to him wasn't just belief in God, but belief in your fellow man, belief in our ability to make things better tomorrow. His thesis was that everyone has God in them, literally and figuratively. We're all made of him, we just have to believe it. But it's at this point that Lamb continues to expand on her struggle with faith by saying, I didn't buy it of course, but I respected him. He was just of that generation. These days, asking kids to have faith in the future is like saying, grow gills. We also learned that after Lamb was bitten by the copperhead, Cash hunted the snake for days, and when he found it, he killed it, stuffed it, and mounted it on the church wall. Because as Lamb put it, for him, the snake was temptation, not to sin, but to lose your way, to stop believing in yourself and other people. But even with all of Lamb's explanations, there's clearly a lot more going on with Lamb, and why our perspective on faith is so different from her dad's, especially considering how much she clearly admires him. So let's see what insights Scott and Greg can give us here.
Lamb's relationship to her father is really important to the whole story. I mean, he always wanted her to be able to have faith in other people, and the fact that he wasn't able to share his secrets about being a part of this demon hunting organization really hurt their relationship. But deep down, the thing that Lamb has to do is kind of overcome some of the distance between her and him and find the hero inside of herself. I mean, she admits in the very first few pages her mother died in a hit and run, and the guy who hit her mother was never found. And that destroyed her sense of faith in other people, that someone could do that and leave someone that was so great in her mind, like her mother, to die alone at the side of the road. And so Lamb and her father have very different views of what it means to have faith in other people, and she finds it very, very difficult. But after his death, when she meets his old partner, who's the last person you would think she would find faith through, Lamb comes to discover that it's worth believing in other people, even when they have horns and claws.
When you have the relationship with Lamb and her father, it's just like most kids and their parents, right? So, I mean, to me, stuff like that is just making things grounded and believable, because we all experience this stuff. To me, those things are just the things that ground a fantasy story. You have to add all this real stuff in there that everybody's comfortable and familiar with, and that's how you get these believable, fantastic stories.
Now that really starts to give us a clearer view of who Lamb is, what drives her, and how it will play into the story as it unfolds. And it just so happens that this is where Lamb's story about her father begins to take a turn, as she concludes her perspective of him in those early years by saying, sure, he traveled a lot without explanation, and yeah, he could be guarded, but he was Godfolk, or so I thought until that one night when I was 16. On the next page, we are then taken to Lamb at home playing a fantasy role-playing game online with her friend Carrie. But she is distracted when she overhears her father arguing with a massive mystery figure outside of their house in the middle of the night. Lamb says, someone was arguing with my father outside. I couldn't hear them, but I could hear my dad. As we see Lamb peeking through her window and Cash in the distance saying, just stop, Lamb will hear you. You think I like keeping all of this from her, everything we do, but she's my daughter, and I say no. She doesn't need to know. Not yet. End of discussion. And on the final panel of our exclusive preview of issue 1, we see the shocked reality begin to sink in for Lamb that she may not really know her father. As she says, of course it wasn't the end of anything. That night, it started something for me.
When Lamb is about 14, 15, something happens that changes her whole view of her father. She overhears her father talking in the backyard with a stranger, and it changes her whole life. They're arguing about whether or not Lamb is old enough to know their secret. And so it sets her down this whole path of trying to discover who her father really is. And she starts going through his stuff when he goes away on his strange business trips. She finds blood on his clothes, and then she starts finding these weird 90s dance records in his stuff. She doesn't know if he's a DJ or a hitman or what. And so the mysterious figure in the backyard talking to him is someone who plays a huge part in the story. It's her father's demon hunting partner, Gus, who we'll soon meet and will form a big relationship with Lamb. That's a crucial point in the story when she overhears them talking in the garden and thinks, maybe my father is something I never knew.
Come on guys, a legendary organization of demon hunters who wield powerful swords imbued with one of the 2 unique primordial energies of the universe, mysterious figures, tons of mythology and folklore embedded into the story. It's just freaking nuts. Honestly, we're only 1 issue in, and I think this might be one of my favorite concepts that Snyder and Capullo have done together. It just has such a cool and well thought out mix of supernatural elements, fantasy, mystery, and mythology that make it a crap ton of fun. And we cannot wait to meet Cash's partner, Gus, and see where things go in issue 2. Again, issue 1 of We Have Demons officially drops this Tuesday, October 5th, exclusively on ComiXology and Kindle, with physical copies to follow later down the line through Dark Horse. But you could pre-order your digital copy of the book right now using our link in the description. You could also subscribe to the series so you get each issue as soon as they're released. If all that sounds familiar, it's of course because my book, Astonishing Times, is also a ComiXology original series, and each issue releases the same way. But whether you pre-order We Have Demons 1 or set a reminder to pick it up on October 5th when it releases, the important thing is that you buy the crap out of this book. It's a ton of fun and a great way to kick off the Halloween season. We also want to send a huge thank you to Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo for coming on and giving us some great reveals for the story. And we absolutely have to thank Chip Mosier and the entire ComiXology team for partnering with us so we could bring this awesome sneak peek to the Variant Nation. But to close things out, we asked Scott and Greg what their final thoughts would be on the first issue and what you and the audience could expect going forward.
We're giving you a classic battle of good versus evil. I would just say if you're familiar with me and Scott together as a team, you can expect a lot of excitement. And because we're on a different book and more horror, you can expect lots of gore, lots of monsters, lots of sword play, lots of action, along with a great deep story that has layers that go back for centuries and centuries and centuries. So get ready for a fun ride is all I can tell you.
We Have Demons is a book that we wanted to do forever. It's got our whole hearts in it. It's kind of horror meets big summer blockbuster action. What I want you to know is there's so much that I can't tell you it's going to happen in issue 2 and 3. It is like 3 movies kind of packed into one big comic. But it's a world that Greg and I really want to return to again and again. Lamb and Gus, wait till you see him. He's one of my favorite designs from Greg ever. So Lamb and her demon partner Gus, as soon as they get going and start hunting down demons and discover the truth about Halo and Horn and all of that, it opens a whole world that we hope to return to over and over again for you guys.
And that's going to bring today's episode of Variant to a close. But if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out this one right here. And if you like all of our content, subscribe, like, comment. It always helps the channel out. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.